chatter, but no one moved to answer it. The desert wind whispered through the canvas walls, carrying with it the weight of what everyone knew was about to happen next. But that comes later. For now, the story begins 6 months earlier, when Commander Mary Thompson received orders that would change everything. The briefing room at Forward Operating Base Phoenix was stifling that morning, packed with officers whose eyes betrayed nothing and everything. Mary sat in the front row, her uniform crisp despite the relentless heat, her hands folded with the discipline of someone who had learned long ago that stillness was a weapon. Colonel Patterson, a man whose voice seemed designed for delivering bad news, stood at the front with a folder marked in red. Top secret. Eyes only. The kind of folder that ended careers or started wars. Operation Silent Thunder. He began, his words falling like hammer strikes on steel. Priority Alpha. Congressional oversight suspended. Media blackout in effect. Mary's stomach tightened, though her expression never changed. 37 years old, 15 years of service, 4 combat deployments. She had learned to read between the lines when powerful men spoke in euphemisms. Intelligence suggests a high-value target operating from a civilian compound approximately 40 clicks northeast of our position. Patterson continued. Local sources indicate the presence of non-combatants, including children. There it was. The pause that meant everything. Your unit will neutralize the threat. Rules of engagement are flexible. Mary's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Around her, other officers nodded with the kind of practiced indifference that came from years of following orders without asking questions. But Mary had always been different. Mary had always asked questions. "Sir," she said, her voice cutting through the recycled air like a blade. "What's the collateral assessment?" Colonel Patterson's eyes found hers, and for a moment, the room seemed to shrink. "Acceptable losses, Commander. That's all you need to know." But Mary Thompson had never been satisfied with all you need to know. The mission launched at 300 hours under a moonless sky that offered no witnesses to what was about to unfold. Mary led her unit through the darkness with the precision of a surgeon and the instincts of a predator. Each soldier moved like a shadow, their faces painted black, their weapons ready for violence that hadn't yet been born. The compound emerged from the desert like a ghost of civilization, its walls weathered by sandstorms and time. From their position on the ridge, Mary could see the target building through her night vision scope. But she could also see something else. Laundry hanging on a line, children's toys scattered in a courtyard, the unmistakable signs of innocent lives caught in the crossfire of someone else's war. "Overwatch to ground team," the voice crackled in her earpiece. "You're clear to engage. Weapons free." Mary's finger hovered over the radio button. Behind her, 43 soldiers waited for the order that would send them into battle. These weren't recruits. These were warriors who had followed her through the gates of hell because she had never led them astray. They trusted her with their lives, and she had never betrayed that trust. Until now. "Ground team to Overwatch," she whispered into the radio, her voice steady despite the earthquake in her chest. "Requesting confirmation on civilian status. Negative, ground team. Intelligence is solid. Engage the target." Through her scope, Mary watched a woman emerge from the main building, carrying a small child. The woman moved with the exhausted grace of a mother, trying to comfort a crying baby. She had no idea that death was watching her from the ridge, calculating angles and kill zones. "Commander," Staff Sergeant Rodriguez whispered beside her. "What are your orders?" Mary closed her eyes for a fraction of a second, long enough to see the faces of every soldier she had lost, every family she had destroyed, every decision that had carved pieces from her soul. When she opened them again, she had made her choice. "Stand down," She whispered into her radio. "All units, stand down. Ground team, you are ordered to engage. This is not a request." "Overwatch," Mary said, her voice carrying the weight of 15 years of service. "I have eyes on multiple civilians, including children. I am aborting the mission pending confirmation of target identification." The radio exploded with chatter. Voices overlapped, orders were shouted, threats were made. But Mary Thompson had stopped listening. She was watching the woman in the courtyard, watching her rock her child back to sleep, watching her disappear back into the building that was supposed to be a tomb. "Commander Thompson," Colonel Patterson's voice cut through the chaos, sharp as a blade and twice as deadly. "You are ordered to complete your mission. This is a direct command." Mary looked back at her soldiers, these men and women who had followed her into hell because they believed in her. Their eyes held no judgment, only trust. Even now, even as she destroyed her career and theirs, they trusted her. "Negative," she said into the radio, her voice steady as stone. "Mission aborted. We're coming home." The ride back to base was conducted in silence. 44 vehicles carrying 44 soldiers who knew their world had just changed forever. Mary sat in the lead Humvee, staring out at the desert that had become her second home, her second hell. She had saved innocent lives tonight, but she had also signed her own death warrant. The base was waiting for them when they arrived, floodlights cutting through the darkness like accusing fingers. Military police stood at the gate, their weapons ready, their faces carved from granite. This wasn't a welcome home. This was an arrest. Mary stepped out of her vehicle with the same calm dignity she had carried into battle. Around her, her soldiers formed an unconscious honor guard, not protecting her from what was coming, but standing witness to it. Colonel Patterson emerged from the command building like a demon from hell, his face twisted with rage and something darker. Behind him walked two men in civilian suits, the kind of men who signed death certificates before the bullets were fired. "Commander Thompson," Patterson's voice carried across the compound like thunder. "You are relieved of duty pending court-martial for disobeying direct orders, endangering national security, and conduct unbecoming an officer." Mary said nothing. She simply stood there, surrounded by her soldiers, waiting for what came next. "Remove your insignia and surrender your weapon," Patterson commanded. And that's when it happened. That's when Mary Thompson looked her superior officer in the eye and said the three words that would echo through military history. "I won't comply." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the desert wind seemed to hold its breath. 43 soldiers stood frozen, watching their commander defy the entire chain of command with the same quiet courage that had led them through countless battles. Patterson's face went white with rage. "Sergeant Major," he barked, "place this officer under arrest." But something extraordinary happened next. Instead of moving forward to arrest their commander, Mary's soldiers stepped closer to her. Not in defiance, not in rebellion, but in solidarity. 43 warriors who had chosen honor over orders, truth over career, their commander over their command. "Sir," Staff Sergeant Rodriguez said quietly, his voice carrying across the compound like a prayer, "we respectfully decline." One by one, Mary's soldiers removed their own weapons and placed them on the ground, not surrendering them to authority, but laying them down by choice. A peaceful revolution conducted in silence under the desert stars. The civilian suits whispered urgently to Patterson, who looked like a man watching his world collapse. The MPs shifted nervously, unsure whether to arrest one officer or 44 soldiers. This wasn't in any manual, wasn't covered by any regulation. Mary finally spoke, her voice cutting through the chaos with surgical precision. 43 families will go home to their loved ones tonight because we chose to be soldiers instead of executioners. If that's conduct unbecoming an officer, Then I'll wear that charge like a medal. What happened next was unprecedented in modern military history. The entire unit was placed under house arrest, while Pentagon officials tried to figure out how to prosecute 44 soldiers for refusing to murder children. Media outlets got wind of the story within hours, and by morning, the names Commander Mary Thompson and the Phoenix 44 were trending across every social platform. The military tried to control the narrative, claiming the mission had been aborted due to faulty intelligence. But someone had recorded Mary's radio transmissions, and the truth had a way of finding the light. Video footage emerged of the soldiers laying down their weapons, of 43 warriors choosing conscience over command. The image of Mary Thompson standing calm and resolute while chaos erupted around her became iconic, a symbol of moral courage in an age of moral compromise. Congressional hearings were demanded. Protests erupted outside military installations. Veterans organizations split down the middle, with some calling Mary a traitor while others hailed her as the embodiment of military honor. The court-martial lasted 3 weeks and became the most watched military trial in a generation. Mary took the stand on the final day, wearing her dress blues with every ribbon and medal she had earned in 15 years of service. The prosecutor, a career military lawyer with ice in his veins, tried to paint her as an insubordinate officer who had endangered national security. But when he finished his questioning, Mary Thompson looked directly at the panel of judges and said, "I swore an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic." That oath didn't come with an exception clause for following illegal orders. Those children in that compound were not my enemies. They were just children. The courtroom fell silent. Even the prosecutor seemed to deflate slightly. "I have led soldiers in a battle for 15 years, Mary continued, her voice never wavering. "I have watched good men and women die for causes worth dying for. But I will not watch them become murderers for causes worth nothing at all." She paused, looking at each judge in turn. "If protecting innocent life makes me guilty of conduct unbecoming an officer, then I accept that verdict with honor. But I will not accept the guilt of their blood on my hands." The verdict came down 3 days later, not guilty on all charges. The panel of judges, all career military officers, had deliberated for less than 2 hours. In their written opinion, they stated that Commander Thompson's actions were consistent with the highest traditions of military service and the moral obligations of command. The 43 soldiers of her unit were also cleared of all charges and returned to active duty. Most requested transfer to other units, not out of shame, but because they knew their careers in the conventional military were effectively over. Mary Thompson retired from active duty 6 months later with full honors and a chest full of medals that told the story of a warrior's journey from soldier to conscience. She never gave interviews about that night in the desert, never wrote a book, never sought to capitalize on her moment in history. She simply went home to a small town in Montana, where she bought a ranch and raised horses. Visitors sometimes came by, hoping to meet the woman who had defied the entire military establishment and won. Most left disappointed, because Mary Thompson looked like any other rancher, weathered by sun and wind, more comfortable talking about feed prices than military ethics. But those who knew how to look could see it in her eyes. The quiet satisfaction of someone who had faced the ultimate test of character and emerged unbroken. She had chosen honor over career, conscience over command, and history had vindicated her choice. Years later, when military academies taught courses on ethical leadership, they used a case study simply called the Phoenix Decision. It wasn't about tactics or strategy. It was about the moment when a commander had to choose between following orders and following conscience. The compound in the desert was never attacked. Intelligence later revealed that the high-value target had been a schoolteacher who ran a small clinic for local children. The weapons cache was medical supplies. The terrorist training facility was a small school where children learned to read and write. Mary Thompson had saved 43 innocent lives that night, but she had saved something more important: the soul of military honor itself. And in the end, when the desert wind whispers stories of courage to those who know how to listen, it tells the tale of a commander who discovered that the greatest victory isn't winning the battle. It's knowing which battles are worth fighting at all. Commander Mary Thompson did something that night that shook the foundations of military command. She reminded the world that following orders and following conscience aren't always the same thing. And sometimes the greatest act of courage is simply saying no. The desert remembers.
Like and subscribe.